Hi, everybody. We are going to be starting a brand new unit today on volume. It's a pretty short unit. It's really just an extension of what you learned last year in 7th grade. And actually today we're doing the volume of rectangular prisms and cubes, and we actually did do this in 7th grade. So this is a bit of a review to start. So if you can remember, first of all, what volume is, that's important to talk about. So last year we did surface area and volume. So if you remember, volume is when you are going to fill something, fill a three-dimensional object. Okay, so if we're talking about a rectangular prism, the volume formula that we used last year was volume equals length times width times height. Okay, so you guys are very familiar with that. If you're talking about a cube, we actually can use the same formula as a rectangular prism, or a cube does have its own special formula. So I want you to think about it, the sides of a cube are all the same. So I can call them all S because they're all the same length. And so if I were to multiply S times S, which is the length times the width times the height, that would give me S to the third power. So that's the formula that I can use for volume of a cube. Okay, so a little bit of review from last year is just finding the volume of these three-dimensional shapes that you see here. Okay, so in number 1, actually 1 through 4, these are all rectangular prisms. So it says to find the volume of each. So our work that we show is our formula. And then our second line will be our substitution step. So instead of length, I'm going to put 21. My width would be 9, and my height would be 7. Now, a lot of people ask, well, I put the 9 is the length and the 21 is my width. It doesn't matter. Because we're multiplying all three of these numbers together, the commutative property says it doesn't matter the order in which you multiply. We will all get the same answer. So do not worry about putting in the correct dimensions here. Okay, so when you multiply all three of those numbers together, you should be getting 1,323. And because it's volume, we are going to label it as feet cubed. So that would be my final answer there. Okay, number 2, another rectangular prism, so length times width times height. I'm going to choose 11 to be my length, 8 to be my width, and 20 to be my height. Again, the order of those numbers doesn't matter. No matter what, we will all get 1,760 centimeters cubed. Okay, moving on to number 3, another rectangular prism, length times width times height. Let's see, I'm going to pick 3 times 16.6 times 23.1 as my order. And if we multiply those three numbers together, we're going to get 1,150.38 yards cubed. Okay, one last one here. Length times width times height. So let's see, I'm going to say 32 times 17, and the height is also 17. So multiplying those three things together gives me 9,248 inches cubed. All right, number 5. Mrs. Hayward wants to fill her daughter's sandbox with sand. If one bag of sand fills 5 cubic feet, how many bags would she need to buy? True story, by the way. Had to do this last summer. So if these are the dimensions of the sandbox, the first thing I have to do is figure out the volume. Okay, so how much sand total does this sandbox hold? So length times width times height. 5 times 3 times 1.5. Okay, so the total volume of the sandbox is 22.5 cubic feet. Okay, so if I know that one bag of sand can fill 5 cubic feet, how can I figure out how many bags of sand I will need? I would divide. So 22.5 divided by 5 gives me 4.5. So if I go to Home Depot and I say, excuse me, I need 4.5 bags of sand, they're probably going to look at me and think I'm a little crazy. So we'd have to decide, do I need 4 bags of sand or 5 bags of sand? Because they're not going to let me buy a half of a bag. And so in this case, I would round up. I'd rather have extra sand than not enough. So I'm going to round that up to 5 bags. All right, let's look at some cubes. So on the back, remember cubes are three-dimensional shapes that have squares as their faces. So every side is the same length, which is why we can use side to the third power for our volume. And so this is pretty easy because it's just 9 to the third power. Now, if you forgot how to type in to the third power in your calculator, you're going to type in 9, and then you're going to look for that caret key. I know it's probably not the technical name for it, but you guys know I always call it that. Looks like that. So you'll do 9 caret key 3, and that will get you 9 to the third power. And if you did it correctly, you should be getting 729 meters cubed. Now, remember, if you forget how to use the caret key, you could just type in 9 times 9 times 9. Okay, it's not a big deal. It's not like we're doing 9 to the 10th power. Okay, number 7, same thing. Side to the third power. 8.1 to the third power. Type that in. This is going to give me 531.441 inches cubed. Okay, great. Let's look at number 8. Joe keeps his baseball trading cards in a shoebox that measures 5.5 inches by 4 4/5 inches by 3 inches. How much can the shoebox hold? Okay, so if we need to know how much it holds, that's volume. We know that this is a rectangular box because if you look at the dimensions, they are all different. So I know I'm going to be using length times width times height. And we can plug in our dimensions here, 5.5 times 4 4/5 times 3. Okay, so when you guys are typing this in your calculator, if you want to keep the fractions as they are, remember to use your ABC key. So you would, for 5.5, type in 5, ABC1, ABC2, times 4, ABC4, ABC5, times 3. Okay, so if you typed that in correctly, or if you typed it correctly, excuse me, you should be getting 79 1/5 inches cubed. Now, if you changed those to decimals, so let's say you did 5.5 times 4.8 times 3, you should be getting 79.2. Okay, so that's the decimal equivalent of that answer. Okay, number 9. A rectangular prism has a volume of 71.06 cubic yards. If the length of the prism is 8.5 yards, the width is 3 4/5 yards, what is the height? Okay, so this is different than what we've seen because now they're giving me the volume, they're giving me the length, and they're giving me the width. And I need to find out what the height is. So I'm still going to use my volume formula for a rectangular prism. It's just that I'm going to be filling in different values. Okay, so normally we were filling in the length, the width, and the height. Well, now I know the volume, so I'm going to plug in what I know the volume is, 71.06. The length they also tell me, so I'll put that in for L, 8.5. I also know the width, 3 4/5. So what I don't know is the height. That's the piece I'm missing here. So if this were an equation that we were solving earlier in the year, the first thing we would do is we would multiply the 8 1/2 times the 3 4/5. So let's go ahead and do that. Again, you can use your ABC key to multiply. And if you typed it all in correctly, you should be getting 32 3/10 H. Okay, so to solve this equation for H, I have to get rid of that 32 3/10. And to do that, since it's being multiplied by H, the opposite would be to divide. So I'm going to divide both sides by 32 3/10. Okay, those of you that like decimals better, you can divide by 32.3. All right, so in your calculators, 71.06 divided by 32.3 or 32 3/10. Okay, and if you divided that correctly, you should be getting 2.2. Now, because this is the height, my label is just yards. I'm not trying to find the volume. I already know the volume. So anytime you're finding a dimension, the units is always just whatever it is, yards, feet, inches. Okay, there's no squared, no cubed, just the unit. Okay, number 10. Find the height of the rectangular prism in each situation. Okay, so this is exactly what we just did. We are given the volume, the length, and the width, and the height is the thing that we're missing. So I'm going to start with my formula. It tells me that these are rectangular prisms. I'm going to put in what I know the volume is for the first one, 455. I'm also going to plug in what I know the length and the width are, and it's the height that I don't know. So if you remember from up above, the first thing we did is we multiplied the 10 times the 7, the length times the width. So now I have 70 times h. So in order to get rid of my 70 attached to the h, I need to divide both sides by 70. And this is going to give me a height, I'm going to write it up here, this would give me a height of 6.5. Okay, so again, 6.5, and this is just centimeters. Okay, part B, same idea. It's another rectangular prism where they've given me the volume, the length, and the width. So let's plug in each of those numbers into our formula in the appropriate place. Okay, so the first thing I need to do is 7.5 times 3.5. And that gives me 26.25 h. Okay, so again, 26.25 times h means I need to divide by 26.25 to get h alone. And if you divide that out, you should be getting 20. And so my height is 20 meters. Okay, last question. A rectangular prism has a volume of 216 cubic inches. Determine the side length of a cube who has the same volume. Okay, so we have this rectangular prism. We know its volume is 216 cubic inches. But then we also have this cube whose volume is the same, but we don't know anything about the sides. So it doesn't really matter that we don't know the sides of the rectangular prism. That's not important. What's important is that we know the volume, because the volume of the cube has to be the same. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the volume formula for a cube. And I'm going to plug in that I know this cube has a volume of 216. And so what's missing is the side length. So our job is to figure out what number to the third power gives us 216. Okay, so you don't have to guess and check. That's the good news. We can actually do something called the cubed root. So you guys know what the square root is, right? So over here on the side for a second. If I said s squared equals 25, right, we would say, okay, what times itself gives me 25? And we would say 5. And the way we get that is by taking the square root. Okay, the cube root means that something times itself 3 times gave me 216. And so just like we did the square root, we're going to do something called the cubed root. Okay, so in your calculator, normally to find the square root, we press the second or the control and then x squared. To find anything other than a square root, there is a button right above that, and on that button, there's a symbol that looks like that. And so you're going to press the control or second key and then that button. And what will happen is you're going to see this exact thing pop up on your screen. Okay? So clear it all out, because here's what you're going to do. You're going to type in 3 for cube root, then get this thing to pop up on your screen. So second, that button, and then you're going to type in 216 and press enter. And if you typed that in correctly, you should be getting 6. I have to apologize because I do not have a scientific calculator with me at home, and so I'm just going off of memory here. Otherwise, I would have told you exactly what key it is, but I do know it's right above your x squared key. Okay, so that is how you're going to get the cube root. And if you think about it and check it, 6 times 6 is 36, times 6 is 216, so it does work. And since this is a side, we're going to say 6 inches. Okay, so if anybody wants to snap a picture of your scientific calculator you have at home and post it in the comments, that might be helpful for people to see, because I don't have mine here at home. All right, thanks guys. We'll see you in the next lesson.